Hi, I'm Megan Glick with Dealer eProcess, and today we have Gino Ciparoni, also with Dealer eProcess, and Jesse Hochholter with Google. And we asked Google your questions that you guys submitted to us. So we'll go ahead and get started. The first question about Google Analytics is, what's the biggest mistake you see dealers making with their Google Analytics account?
Oh, I love this question. This is a fantastic question.
How much time you got?
Seriously. The biggest mistake I see has to do with how you actually look at the data, because, in Google Analytics, there is so much data in there. There's, you can see time on site. You can see where people are coming from geographically, where they're coming from in terms of the, social media versus display advertising versus paid versus organic. You can see how many pages they're looking at, the bounce rates, yada, 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 right? There's so many things you can look at, but if you look at these things as like a slice of information and you kind of view it in a vacuum, then you're gonna really miss up. You need to make sure that you're getting in there and actually looking at the data in a meaningful way. So as an example, if you're a dealership, you might be really concerned about something like bounce rate. But in actuality, bounce rate is not necessarily a metric that you can say is either good or bad. So if I'm a dealership and my bounce rate is 45%, I can't say, oh, that means that people, that 45% of the time people are coming to my site and it's not where they meant to be. Because bounce rate actually just means that they didn't have another interaction with the site. So they could have been there, they could have gotten all the information they need, and if they didn't have another interaction, then they left and that counted as a bounce. So what we want to be careful of is not comparing these metrics to, other sites' metrics. Like as an example, Gino, if we were to run miles right now and we were to gauge our times and someone would say, oh, Gino's a way better runner than Jesse.
No, they'd be wrong.
It's not very fair because you're a lot taller, right? It's not fair to compare you versus me. What would be more fair is if I went and ran today and then, in 3 weeks from now I got better and I saw that there was an improvement. So we want to make sure that we're looking at it that way.
Do you see any benefit in sometimes using a comparison, maybe brands or stores in a local market?
Yeah,
as a benchmark?
Absolutely. I mean, there's always benchmarking that you're going to use, but it's really when we get what I call, and I apologize for the dealers out there, but dealers tend to be a little bit data myopic, which means that they grasp onto one data point and then they tend to just kind of fixate on that. So we just want to make sure we're not doing that. If we're looking at overall benchmarks, that's completely fine, but we just want to make sure we're not looking at that data in a vacuum. We're looking at trends. We're looking at it kind of in a dynamic sort of way.
Right.
I would say also too, one big mistake that happens a lot with a lot of analytics accounts is too many hands in the pot. You'll have code after code after code after code, either in analytics or in a Google Tag Manager or on your site from all these different companies that then clash together and you get inaccurate data. So make sure your tracking is clean and that the right people are doing it.
One thing I would maybe add to that is making sure you understand what your specific codes are doing, whether it's in analytics or on the Tag Manager. How do they work with one another? Is everything still working properly once they're implemented, through the Tag Manager?
100%. That's a big issue with dealers.
Perfect. So kind of leading into that, what would you guys say is kind of the top KPIs to measure or a dealer should look at inside a Google Analytics account?
So this is an interesting question, and I think it's going to depend a lot on the dealership and what their specific goals are. But one thing that I like to think about it as is, as a dealership matures in their tracking, they go from measuring things like clicks, click-through rates, impressions, to things that are a little bit more meaningful, like conversions. And when I say conversions, this isn't just phone calls or form leads. It could also be they're really engaged with your VDPs, right? So they're looking at maybe 5 different VDPs per session. They're staying for over 5 minutes, whatever it might be that you're looking at there. But making sure you're moving away from those really transactional sort of just clicks, click-through rate, impressions, the stuff that you see really in AdWords reports, and then getting a little bit deeper into some of those micro conversions. So the actual KPIs that you're looking at, the actual goals that you might set up in analytics, that are going to be different dealership to dealership. Some dealerships want you to, that they're really concerned about people looking at a lot of different inventory. So that's one thing. Others want you to just come in, and so they're concerned about, are they landing on our hours and directions page, right? So it's going to be different for every dealership, but just make sure that you're getting more robust in how you're measuring those things.
Also along those lines too, it's not a specific KPI, but one thing I always suggest to dealers is look at your history. I mean, let's look at things like seasonality or different trends, because a lot of times we'll have dealers who call us up and say, hey, last month, let's just call last month February, last month my traffic was down, why is that? And it could be because of one of the metrics that Jesse just covered, or we could look back in the last 3-4 years, your traffic went down in February every single year. So it could just be a lot of different outside factors affecting the data that we're looking at that we have to keep in mind.
And this is where benchmarking, to your point, Megan, really comes in, is looking at, if we're seeing that there are dips in February across the board, then that's an excellent way to use that benchmarking data and compare yourself to others.
So kind of piggybacking off of that question then, another question that came in was, is there a custom dashboard that you guys would recommend a dealer put together in their account and kind of follow up with? And then if so, how frequently should they be looking at this dashboard?
Yeah, so I say personally, it depends how into this data you are. If it were me, I'd probably have it up on my screen all the time and be looking at it. You can in Google Analytics, you can have live dashboards that are showing what's happening on your site right then. But some of the key reports that you're going to want to look at in there are definitely the geographic report. It's a very simple report, but one that I think is not utilized enough. And this is just showing you, okay, we know that you're this particular dealer, but where is the traffic coming from geographically? Are they coming from 20 miles around your store? There could be a really surprising source of traffic that you didn't think about that has really great conversions, that has really great interaction. And so you want to take that best practice, that learning, and apply some of your advertising dollars there. Maybe apply some sort of a branding campaign or display campaign or whatever you want to do. So I'd say definitely geographic. The other one that's really critical is the source medium report. And this is in the acquisition session. And what this is going to explain to you is what is the source, where's the source of the traffic? So is it Google organic? Is it Google CPC or paid? Is it coming from Facebook, a referral? Is it Facebook ads? Is it Bing? Is it Yahoo? Where is that traffic actually coming from? And then you can break that down, okay, based on those traffic buckets. Are we seeing, more engagement, more time on site? Are we seeing those conversions actually happening? And then you can also add lots of secondary dimensions to these reports and see things like, okay, so for Google Organic, we can layer in the geo report and say for Google Organic, we see that we're getting this much traffic, but how does this look in the different cities that we're showing up in? So I would say that if we want to just keep it simple, the geography report and the source medium report, and the only other one I'd say is the audience overview report is the one you land on when you actually get in Google Analytics. And if you are actually running a comparison date-wise, so up in the right corner, just comparing the dates, this can also be a really valuable report to see how your traffic's shifted and changed over time.
Jesse, do you find you're comparing year over year or month over month more often?
Great question. For dealerships especially, I find that year over year is the best way to do it. Because if we look at month over month, just to Gino's point earlier, if February is a really bad month and then we're trying to compare February to January, then that's not really going to be fair because we're going to see a dip in traffic, and that's really of no fault of our own, just because of seasonality, because maybe February has fewer weekends in it. So we want to make sure that we're as often as we can comparing apples to apples, and so that would be the year over year.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of what dashboards you'd want to be looking at all the time, I mean, I agree with Jesse. Whatever dashboards I can have up 24/7, I have up. Dealers have to sell cars though, right? So they can't be sitting in front of a computer looking at dashboards all day. And a dashboard that will tell you if you're selling cars is obviously a good one to have. And so, I mean, at Dealer E, we have something that can do that for you. But I mean, let's even just start looking at how are we benefiting? What is selling us cars? Where are we making the most money? And then from there, when you have the time, you can start to backtrack and say, this is working a little bit better than this, or this lead form sells more frequently than that one. How do we optimize those things? But that kind of big picture dashboard is one that I would always want to have up.
Yeah, and to that point, I think that's really crucial because of course, if we can track that down to the sales, that's going to be the most important thing. How many cars are we actually selling? But what we know is that, conversions, there's only going to be a small handful of conversions, but there's a lot of traffic going to the site. So we want to understand also, why isn't this traffic converting? So that's where some of these other metrics can come in. So I absolutely think a combination of the two is absolutely critical.
Great answers. One of the questions that we actually had a lot of dealers give us was they were unsure about how to add multiple sets of hours to their Google My Business page. Is that something Google can personally walk us through, or?
Yeah, I mean, so there are lots of help articles on this, but just kind of in a nutshell, the way you're gonna do this, because I know dealers tend to have special hours with different, holidays or things that are going on. And you can do this through the back end of Google My Business. There's actually a dashboard that you can use, and there's a special hours section. And so you're actually just gonna click on that tab, and you can set those special hours for a certain period of time. So if you wanna say, this particular weekend, so the, whatever it is, the 18th, the 21st, we're gonna be open special hours. You can actually just go in and set that, and it will show those special hours on Google My Business for that time period, and then stop for the rest of the time. So it's very easy to set up in the back end.
Perfect. That's definitely one that's come through quite a few times for us. Just a few more for you guys. What SEO blogs or anything related to Google Analytics would you guys recommend maybe a dealer or an internet manager or even someone on the marketing side should follow or stay up to date with?
Should we tackle this one?
Yeah, I mean, I always think with Google. I mean, it's go to the source is my philosophy, but outside of Google, I mean, one thing that's important to do is to look outside of automotive because a lot of times we get kind of fixated on automotive blogs or automotive trends, which obviously that's the business we're in, but things outside of automotive can start to generate a lot of ideas about what sort of strategies we can implement within our own industry. Like, is there something going on with e-commerce that we can then take back in here? And so there's tons of articles and blogs out there to look at. I mean, we've got stuff popping up on the dealer eProcess blog all the time, dealereprocess.com. Jesse?
Really? Never heard of it.
And another one I like a lot is Search Engine Land is another great one too. I mean, there's tons of them out there, and it's just whatever you can take from it and use, that's a winning article. So.
Yeah, and even if we're moving a little bit away from the blogs and articles, if you use like Google Search Console and some of these tools within analytics to see what's happening with your organic traffic, you can get a lot of key learnings from that, not only for your organic efforts, but also for your paid efforts and vice versa. So I'd say there's a lot of resources out there.
One thing that I think more dealerships can benefit from too is Google Trends.
Oh, absolutely.
I think Google Trends is a great place to just go in there and do some high-level exploring. Has searches for a certain model been trending up or down? And what can we do to benefit from that? Or what do we need to do if it is going down to start veering away from that and finding where else people are searching? So Google Trends is, to me, just a huge place to just go play around with.
And how do we find Google Trends?
I would probably think with Google.
It is.
Yeah,
You can do either, you can get there, thinkwithgoogle.com and go to the tools on the right-hand side, or you can even just do google.com/trends. And it just shows you kind of index data in terms of how different searches are moving in terms of volume of queries and things like that. So it can give you really, really interesting information.
Also, kind of a great way to compare different brands against each other, just in local markets or overall searches.
Yeah, it's cool. You can dial into pretty close to your own area within these trends. So a lot of good stuff there.
Great.
Check it out.
Check it out. Just a couple more, like I said, and these last two kind of go along with each other. So one of the things that we had heard from a dealer is, how do you guys evaluate the effectiveness of paid search inside analytics versus things coming over from third parties?
Yeah, so this is an interesting question, and I think it's really important to make sure that you understand that different sources of traffic are going to have different results. So obviously, the way I look at, like, let's say organic versus paid is organic traffic is going to tend to have a lower lower percentage of new visitors, right? But it's going to maybe be a little bit higher quality in terms of the time on site, pages per visit, that sort of thing. So we want to keep that in mind, that paid or even referral traffic might have a lot higher new visitors, so you're getting new people to your site, but it might be a little bit lower in terms of the time on site and things like that. So we just want to make sure that we're careful with how we compare them, because they are doing different things for the site, and making sure that we are giving credit where credit is due, because some of these traffic sources are more often an assist to the actual, someone calling or filling out a form, and they're not like that last action that happens before they actually do that. So we want to make sure that we understand, is this a medium like display that's more often helping people kind of have that awareness, or say, oh, I didn't realize there's such a good lease deal right now on that specific vehicle, and then drive them to actually do a search. So we need to just be careful with how we're measuring those things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think just also in the grand scheme of things too, being able to look at this stuff and kind of get a sense of, how different traffic sources are affecting your outcomes will allow you to be more well prepared to talk with the people who are impacting those traffic sources, maybe your vendors or things like that. Like if you have traffic coming from a site, and I'm going to make up a site here, let's call it cartrader.com. A lot of times, dealers will be told that website is driving a lot of traffic to their site, which it very well may be, but is that traffic of any use to you? And so you can really find that out in analytics.
So this last one might be a little tougher, but have either of you ever seen or have any sort of benchmarks on comparing some of these third parties or paid versus organic? For example, you had said organic typically has less new users, where paid might have more because you're reaching a larger audience. Is there anything we can draw from that? Is it, third parties are typically more new users?
Well, I think with third party, what we have to understand is, a lot of people comparison shop, so they might be going to third party, and it could be that they're doing a lot of searches beforehand that might be, they might click on paid, they might click on organic, and then they might end up on a third party site, and that's when they convert. So again, we just want to make sure that we're careful in terms of where we're assigning that value. And, Gino, to your point, those third party kind of referral sites tend to, they can show you that there's a lot of traction on one end, but we want to make sure we go into analytics and verify that and see what's actually happening, because often we see that these third-party sites tend to not be driving as much traffic. Maybe it's higher quality, but it's not going to be as much traffic. So really, we want to make sure we're looking at the ROI and the ROAS, the return on ad spend.
Versus against these other sources.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and for that, my first stop is always the leads dashboard report. For those of you who have dealer eProcess, it can really start to break down all those different referral sources, see which ones are and are not generating you leads. And if they're not generating you leads, that doesn't mean it's a bad traffic source, but let's make sure we categorize it as one that might not be a huge lead generator, yet still has value within the whole attribution model of how somebody becomes a sale.
Right.
So let's just make sure we're looking at things correctly, not just leads, which are important, don't get me wrong. So yeah, that's how I would look at it.
All right. Well, thank you so much, guys. That's it for the Analytics and Google My Business session.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.